I mean, she's certainly dressed the part. That's a lovely costume you're wearing, dear. Very convincing. Victoria's eyes rake over Amara's designer gown with practiced disdain. Though I have to ask, are you here for the jazz ensemble? The catering staff briefing was this morning. The champagne glass slipped from Amara's hand as the laughter echoed around her, but it wasn't the crystal shattering on marble that would haunt them. It was the quiet click of her phone as she canceled their future. Ready for the complete story? Smash that subscribe button and tell me where you are tuning in from in the comments. Tomorrow brings another mind-blowing story that's just as unbelievable. Trust me, you will want to be here for it. Alright, let's jump into it. The Bentley's engine purrs to a stop outside the Whitmore estate, but Amara Watkins doesn't move immediately. Through the tinted windows, she watches the valets in crisp uniforms guide luxury cars up the circular drive. Her reflection stares back, elegant in midnight blue silk, diamond earrings catching the golden hour light, every inch the successful CEO she's fought to become. You don't have to do this, her assistant Solomon had said earlier. Send someone else to the charity gala. But Amara never sends someone else. Not when $1.2 billion is on the table. Not when the Whitmore family's hotel empire needs her tech company's revolutionary booking platform to survive the digital revolution. She steps out, her heels clicking against marble steps worn smooth by generations of privilege. The mansion rises before her like something from a movie. White columns, ivy-covered walls, windows that probably cost more than most people's homes. She's been in rooms like this before, boardrooms where she was the only black face, the only woman, the only one who'd built something from nothing instead of inheriting it. The difference is, tonight she's not here to prove anything. Tonight, she holds all the cards. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across cream walls lined with oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. The who's who of the city's elite mingle with practiced ease, old money recognizing old money, the kind of generational wealth that speaks in coded language and unspoken rules. Amara accepts a champagne flute from a server, scanning the room. There, by the grand piano, Robert Whitmore Sr. holds court, his silver hair gleaming, surrounded by the usual suspects of the charity circuit. She needs to time this perfectly, let him see her, let the anticipation build before they discuss the final contract details. But first, she notices someone else. Near the French doors leading to the garden, a younger man stands slightly apart from a group of his obvious peers. Even across the room, she can see the family resemblance, the same strong jawline as Robert Sr., the same aristocratic bearing. But where the older man commands attention, this one seems to deflect it. He's listening to an older woman's story with genuine interest, not the polite but distracted attention she's seen from most men in his position. Daniel Whitmore, she realizes. The youngest son. The one who chose medicine over business, who runs free clinics instead of board meetings. Their eyes meet across the room, and something unexpected passes between them, not the calculating assessment she's used to, but simple, honest recognition. He starts to move toward her, but his path is intercepted by a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. Well, well, the woman says, loud enough for nearby conversations to pause. I didn't realize the entertainment had arrived. The blonde woman's words hang in the air like poison, but it's not just what she said, it's the way the conversations around them slow, then stop. The way eyes turn toward Amara with a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed amusement. The way Robert Whitmore Sr.'s booming laugh carries across the room at that exact moment, as if the universe is orchestrating this humiliation. Victoria, Daniel's voice cuts through the tension, sharp with warning. Don't. But Victoria Ashford, Amara recognizes her now from the society pages. Robert Sr.'s niece, the family's unofficial social gatekeeper, is just getting started. Her champagne flute tilts dangerously as she gestures toward Amara. I mean, she's certainly dressed the part. That's a lovely costume you're wearing, dear. Very convincing. Victoria's eyes rake over Amara's designer gown with practiced disdain. Though I have to ask, Are you here for the jazz ensemble? The catering staff briefing was this morning. The words hit like a physical blow. Around them, the crowd has grown, drawn by the scent of drama like sharks to blood. Amara feels the familiar burn in her chest, the same feeling she'd had in countless boardrooms, countless rooms where she'd been the only one who looked like her. But this is different. This is personal. This is cruel. Victoria, stop. Daniel moves closer, his face flushed with mortification. This is Amara Watkins, Robert Whitmore Sr.'s voice booms as he approaches, his entourage trailing behind him. But there's something in his tone, a slight hesitation, as if he's only now realizing who's standing before them. CEO of Nexus Technologies. The silence that follows is deafening. Victoria's champagne glass freezes halfway to her lips. Someone in the crowd audibly gasps. The Amara Watkins. An elderly man with kind eyes steps forward. My granddaughter uses your app every day. Revolutionary work you're doing in hospitality tech. But the damage is spreading like spilled wine on white silk. Other voices join in, not kind ones. Well, I never. In my day, people knew their place. The nerve, showing up here like she belongs. Amara stands perfectly still, her champagne flute steady in her hand despite the tremor she feels deep in her bones. She's weathered storms before, built an empire from nothing, faced down investors who thought a young black woman had no business in tech. But this public humiliation in front of people who will never see her as anything more than an intruder, this cuts deeper than she expected. She thinks of Solomon's words, "You don't have to do this." She thinks of the contracts in her briefcase, the signatures that would secure the Whitmore Empire's future. She thinks of her grandmother's voice, "Baby girl, you hold your head high. They can't make you small unless you let them." You know what? Victoria continues, emboldened by the crowd's reaction. I think there's been a mistake. This is a private family gathering for the Children's Hospital charity. Surely someone like you would be more comfortable at, well, wherever people like you usually. Stop. Daniel's voice cracks like a whip, but it's too late. The moment crystallizes with perfect, terrible clarity. Amara sees it all. The faces turn toward her with a mixture of pity and contempt, Victoria's triumphant sneer, Robert Sr.'s dawning horror as he realizes what's happening, Daniel's desperate attempt to intervene. She sees the servers watching from the corners, the only other black faces in the room, their expressions carefully neutral but their eyes full of recognition and pain. And in that crystal-clear moment, she makes her choice. Amara sets down her champagne glass with deliberate care, the soft clink against the marble table somehow louder than all the whispered conversations. She reaches into her purse, Italian leather, custom-made, probably worth more than Victoria's car, and pulls out her phone. You're absolutely right, Victoria, she says, her voice carrying with perfect clarity across the hushed room. There has been a mistake. Her fingers move across her phone's screen with practiced precision. 1 tap. 2. 3. A very expensive mistake. The soft electronic chime of emails being sent seems to echo through the suddenly silent ballroom. Robert Whitmore Sr.'s face has gone ashen. Daniel looks stricken, his eyes locked on Amara's with an expression she can't quite read. Horror, admiration, desperation all mixed together. What did you just do? Robert Sr. asks, his voice barely above a whisper. Amara slides her phone back into her purse, her movements graceful and unhurried. When she speaks, her voice is silk over steel. I canceled our deal, Mr. Whitmore. All $1.2 billion of it. The silence that follows is so complete she can hear her own heartbeat, hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, hear Victoria's sharp intake of breath as the reality hits. You see, Amara continues, looking directly at Victoria, people like me don't usually come to parties like this. We're usually too busy running the companies that keep families like yours from bankruptcy. She turns to face the crowd, noting how they seem to shrink back from her gaze. Thank you for the champagne. and the reminder of why some traditions deserve to die. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone's true character was revealed under pressure? What did you learn about courage from watching it unfold? Drop your thoughts below. The ballroom erupts the moment Amara turns toward the exit. Voices rise in a cacophony of shock, disbelief, and barely contained panic. $1,200 million, someone whispers, the number seeming to echo off the crystal chandeliers. She can't be serious. Robert, do something. But Robert Whitmore Sr. stands frozen, his usual commanding presence crumbling as the weight of what just happened settles over him. 12 years of negotiations. Months of due diligence. The future of his hotel empire, already hemorrhaging money to online competitors, disappearing with the click of a few buttons. Amara, wait. Daniel breaks through his paralysis first, pushing past the stunned guests. His dress shoes slip slightly on the marble as he catches up to her in the foyer. Please just wait. She pauses, her hand on the heavy oak door. When she turns, her composure is perfect, but he can see something raw flickering in her eyes. Your family made their position quite clear, Mr. Whitmore. That wasn't my family, Daniel says desperately. That was Victoria being. Victoria's always been. He stops, runs a hand through his dark hair. God, that sounds pathetic, doesn't it? Making excuses. Behind them, raised voices carry from the ballroom. Robert Sr.'s booming baritone cuts through the chatter. Victoria, what the hell did you think you were doing? I was protecting our family's reputation. Victoria's shrill response follows. You can't seriously tell me you're upset about this. She was clearly out of place. She was our goddamn lifeline. Amara's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Daniel notices. He spent too many years in emergency rooms reading micro-expressions, catching the signs people try to hide. You think this is about money, she says quietly. Isn't it? The question hangs between them. For a moment, something vulnerable flickers across her face, and Daniel glimpses the woman beneath the CEO armor, someone who's been fighting battles like this her entire life, someone tired of having to prove her worth in rooms full of people who see her skin before they see her success. Your cousin just publicly suggested I was either entertainment or help, Amara says. In front of a room full of people who nodded along. And your father's biggest concern is his bottom line. My concern, Daniel says, stepping closer, is that someone I respect was just humiliated in my family's home. She studies his face, searching for something, sincerity perhaps, or the lack thereof. Someone you respect? You don't even know me. I know you built a tech empire from nothing. I know you've revolutionized hotel booking systems. I know you donate more to children's hospitals than most people make in a lifetime. His voice drops. And I know you didn't deserve what just happened in there. For the first time since the confrontation, Amara's perfect composure wavers slightly. Research or genuine interest? Both, he admits. I've been following your work for months. Not for the deal, for me. The free clinic I run, we've been trying to implement better patient management systems. Your platform's principles could revolutionize healthcare accessibility. Something shifts in her expression, but before she can respond, footsteps echo across the marble foyer. Robert Sr. approaches, his face grave, Victoria trailing behind him with tear-streaked mascara and a defiant tilt to her chin. Miss Watkins, Robert begins, his voice carefully controlled. I owe you an apology. Victoria's behavior was inexcusable. Uncle Robert, I was just. You were just what, Victoria? Robert's voice could freeze champagne. Just costing us $1 billion contract? Just embarrassing our family name? Just proving that all our breeding and education couldn't give you basic human decency. Victoria flinches as if slapped. She doesn't belong here. She belongs here more than you do, Daniel snaps, his usual diplomatic nature finally cracking. She earned her place. You inherited yours. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She looks between the three of them, Robert Sr.'s disappointment, Daniel's disgust, Amara's cool assessment, and something breaks in her perfectly composed facade. This is what we get for trying to be inclusive, she spits. For letting them into our world. They'll never be grateful, never understand their place. That's enough. Robert's voice is quiet, but carries absolute authority. You're done, Victoria. Go home. You can't. I can and I am. You're no longer welcome at family events. The trust fund board will hear about this. Consider yourself cut off until you learn what family honor actually means. Victoria stares at him in shock, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then she straightens, pulling her social mask back into place with visible effort. Fine, she says, her voice brittle. But mark my words, this won't end the way you think it will. People like her, they don't forgive. They take and take until there's nothing left. She sweeps toward the door, pausing only to look back at Amara with something like hatred in her eyes. You think you've won something here. But you'll never be one of us. Never. The door slams behind her with a finality that seems to echo through the sudden silence. Robert Sr. turns back to Amara, his shoulders sagging slightly. Miss Watkins, I understand if you can't forgive this. But I'm asking, begging, for a chance to make this right. Not just for the contract, but because what happened here tonight goes against everything I raised my sons to believe. Amara looks between father and son, two generations of privilege grappling with consequences they never expected. She thinks of Solomon's words again, of the contract sitting in her briefcase, of the dozens of employees whose jobs depend on deals like this. But mostly, she thinks of Daniel's eyes when he said she didn't deserve what happened. The genuine anger on her behalf. The way he'd stepped between her and Victoria's cruelty without hesitation. I need air, she says finally. This conversation isn't over, but I need to think. She moves toward the French doors leading to the garden, leaving both men staring after her. Daniel starts to follow, but his father's hand on his arm stops him. Son, Robert says quietly, if you're thinking of going after her, you better be prepared for the long haul. A woman like that doesn't trust easily. And after tonight. Daniel looks toward the garden where Amara has disappeared into the shadows between the carefully manicured hedges. After tonight, she shouldn't trust any of us. But you're going anyway. It's not a question. Daniel straightens his tie, checks his reflection in the foyer mirror out of habit, then stops. What's the point of looking perfect when everything else has gone to hell? Yeah, he says. I'm going anyway. The garden is a masterpiece of landscape architecture, winding paths lit by subtle solar lights, fountains that murmur secrets in the darkness, roses that perfume the night air with their heady sweetness. Amara finds herself on a stone bench beside a koi pond, watching the fish move like liquid shadows beneath the surface. Her phone buzzes. Solomon. How did it go? Ready for champagne to celebrate? She stares at the text, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. How does she explain what just happened? The public humiliation, the casual cruelty, the way Victoria's words had stripped her bare in front of a room full of strangers? Complicated, she types back. We'll call later. I brought you a jacket. Daniel's voice comes from behind her, soft and careful. She doesn't turn around, but she doesn't tell him to leave either. That has to count for something. It's not that cold, she says. Your shoulders say otherwise. She glances down and realizes he's right. She's been unconsciously rubbing her arms. The adrenaline is wearing off, leaving her feeling exposed in more ways than one. He sits beside her on the bench, not touching, maintaining a respectful distance, and drapes his tuxedo jacket around her shoulders anyway. It smells like expensive cologne and something else, antiseptic maybe. The scent of someone who spends time in hospitals instead of boardrooms. Your father sent you, she says. My father tried to stop me. Daniel leans back, tilting his face toward the stars barely visible through the city's glow. He thinks I'm about to make everything worse. Are you? Probably. Despite everything, Amara almost smiles. At least you're honest. The irony is devastating. She sits in silence for a long moment, processing the full scope of what just happened. Then, despite everything, she starts to laugh, a sound caught somewhere between humor and heartbreak. Your family really doesn't know, do they? About the donation, about why I was really here tonight. My father knows about the contract. But the donation. Daniel shakes his head. That information was kept confidential. Only the hospital board and I knew. You're on the hospital board. I chair the pediatric committee. He pauses. Amara, if you walk away from this deal, it's not just my family that suffers. The hospital loses its biggest technology partner. The clinics I work with lose access to the systems we were hoping to implement. Hundreds of kids lose access to cutting-edge care. The weight of it settles over her like a stone. This isn't just about pride or principle anymore. This is about the ripple effects of her decision, about all the people who will be affected by a choice she made in a moment of justified anger. Her phone rings again. This time, she answers. Solomon. Amara, thank God. The Whitmore people are going insane. They're offering to fly their entire board to meet with you tonight. Robert Sr. is having what I can only describe as a controlled breakdown. What happened? She looks at Daniel, who's pretending not to listen while obviously hanging on every word. Book the conference room for tomorrow morning, she says. And Solomon? Call the hospital board. Tell them we need to discuss the Whitmore partnership's impact on the pediatric center. The what now? I'll explain tomorrow. She hangs up and turns to Daniel. It seems we're not done with each other. No, he says, and there's something in his voice that has nothing to do with business deals or hospital partnerships. It seems we're not. The conference room at Nexus Technologies feels like a war room the next morning. Floor-to-ceiling windows reveal the city awakening below, but inside, tension crackles like electricity. Amara sits at the head of the polished mahogany table, flanked by her legal team and board members. Across from her, Robert Whitmore Sr. looks like a man who hasn't slept, his usually immaculate appearance slightly rumpled, his eyes red-rimmed. Daniel sits beside his father, but Amara notices he's positioned himself slightly apart from the rest of the Whitmore delegation, as if maintaining some kind of emotional distance. Before we begin, Robert says, his voice hoarse, I want to reiterate my apology for last night. Victoria's behavior was inexcusable, and she's been removed from any family business dealings permanently. Amara's expression doesn't change. Mr. Whitmore, with respect, this isn't about Victoria. This is about what her behavior revealed about the environment your family operates in. Which is why I'm here to make this right, Robert insists. Whatever you need, public apologies, diversity training for our staff, charitable donations. You think this is about money? Amara's voice is dangerously quiet. You think you can write a check and make this disappear? Solomon, seated at Amara's right, slides a folder across the table. Perhaps we should review the financial implications first. Robert opens the folder, and his face goes ashen. Daniel leans over to look, and Amara watches his expression shift from concern to devastation. $200 million in immediate losses, Solomon continues clinically. That's just the first quarter impact. The cascade effect of losing our platform will likely cost your hotel chain another $300 million in the first year alone. We know the numbers, Robert says, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you? Amara leans forward. Because those numbers represent more than your profit margins. They represent jobs. Your hotels employ over 15,000 people directly, another 30,000 indirectly. When your occupancy rates drop, when you're forced to close properties, real people lose their livelihoods. The weight of her words settles over the room like a shroud. Daniel stares at the folder contents, his medical training allowing him to read between the lines. This isn't just business failure, it's human catastrophe. There's something else, Samara says, her voice softer now. She nods to Solomon, who produces another document. I've been investigating your family's history, Mr. Whitmore. Going back generations. Robert's face tightens. I don't see how that's relevant. 1963, Amara interrupts. Birmingham, Alabama. The Whitmore Hotel refused service to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his delegation during the civil rights demonstrations. The silence that follows is deafening. Daniel looks stricken, his eyes moving between his father and Amara with dawning horror. That was a different time, Robert says weakly. 1987, Amara continues, consulting the document. The Whitmore chain settled a discrimination lawsuit filed by black employees who were systematically denied promotions and equal pay. Those were isolated incidents. 1999, 2003, 2010, 2018. Each date lands like a hammer blow. Pattern discrimination lawsuits, quietly settled, sealed records. Always with enough money to make the problems disappear, never with enough accountability to prevent them from happening again. Daniel's face has gone white. Dad. Those were different circumstances, Robert protests, but his voice lacks conviction. We've changed. Have you? Amara's voice cuts through his excuses like a blade. Because last night, in your family home, I was publicly humiliated by your niece while a room full of your friends and associates watched in approval. And your first concern wasn't the human cost of that cruelty, it was the financial cost to your business. She stands, moving to the window that overlooks the city. Far below, people move through their daily lives, unaware of the drama playing out 30 floors above them. Do you want to know why I really built this company? She asks, her back still turned to the room. Amara, Solomon says quietly, a warning in his voice. But she waves him off. I was 12 years old when my family tried to take a vacation in Florida. My parents had saved for 2 years to afford it, our first real family trip. Her reflection in the window is composed, but Daniel can see the tension in her shoulders. We drove 16 hours to get there, my little brother Cameron and I fighting in the back seat the whole way. She turns back to face the room, her eyes finding Daniel's. The hotel had lost our reservation. Claimed they'd never received it, even though my mother had the confirmation number. We stood in that lobby for 2 hours while they looked into it, watching white families check in smoothly, watching the desk clerk's face every time my father asked for an update. Robert Whitmore shifts uncomfortably in his seat. Finally, the manager came out. Very polite, very apologetic. There had been a computer error, he said. Nothing available for the entire weekend. But there was a motel about 20 miles away that might have something. Amara's voice remains steady, professional, but Daniel can hear the pain underneath. The motel was in a part of town that had seen better days. The pool was empty, the air conditioning barely worked, and Cameron cried himself to sleep because it wasn't the vacation we'd planned. My parents never said it out loud, but I knew. We all knew. The hotel hadn't made a mistake, they'd made a choice. She moves back to her seat, her movements precise and controlled. That night, lying in that rundown motel room, I decided I was going to build something better. A system where reservations couldn't mysteriously disappear, where discrimination couldn't hide behind computer errors and unfortunate mistakes. Solomon places a gentle hand on her arm, but she continues. Cameron died 3 years later. Heart defect. The same kind that kills kids in overcrowded hospitals with outdated equipment. Her eyes find Daniel's again. The kind that doesn't kill kids in hospitals with proper funding and technology. The connection hits Daniel like a physical blow. The anonymous donation, the pediatric technology center, the quiet philanthropy that she never publicized. So yes, Mr. Whitmore, Amara says, her gaze shifting to Robert, this is personal. Your family has a 60-year history of discrimination, and last night proved that history isn't as buried as you'd like to believe. Robert Sr. looks devastated, age lines deepening as the full weight of his family's legacy settles over him. Miss Watkins, I had no idea about the earlier incidents. My grandfather, my father, they never. I thought we were better than that. Ignorance isn't innocence, Amara replies. Not when the evidence is there for anyone who cares to look. Daniel finally speaks, his voice rough with emotion. The hospitals you donate to, they're all in communities of color. Communities like the one I grew up in, Amara confirms. Communities that get overlooked when philanthropy galas hand out awards to wealthy white families for their generosity. She looks around the room, taking in the faces of everyone present, her team's protective anger, Robert's dawning shame, Daniel's quiet devastation. The question now is whether your family is capable of genuine change, or if you're just looking for another way to buy your way out of accountability. Robert Sr. closes the financial folder with shaking hands. What would genuine change look like to you? For the first time since entering the conference room, Amara's expression softens slightly. That, Mr. Whitmore, is something we'll have to figure out together. If we decide to figure it out at all. She turns to Daniel, who hasn't spoken since his initial shock. You've been quiet. I'm processing, he says, echoing her words from the night before. Learning that my family history includes things I never knew about, things I should have known about. Your father didn't tell you about the lawsuits? Daniel shakes his head. I've been so focused on my own work, my own world. I thought being different from them was enough, running clinics instead of board meetings, treating patients instead of counting profits. But that's not enough, is it? Not if I'm still benefiting from systems built on discrimination. The honesty in his voice surprises everyone in the room, including Amara. No, she says quietly. It's not. Have you ever discovered something about your family's past that changed how you saw yourself? How do we reconcile loving someone with acknowledging their mistakes? Share your thoughts. This is a conversation we all need to have. 3 hours later, the formal meeting has dissolved into something more intimate. The lawyers and board members have filtered out, leaving only Amara, Daniel, Robert Sr., and Solomon in the conference room. Coffee cups litter the table alongside stacks of documents that tell the story of decades of institutional discrimination. I need some air, Robert says, loosening his tie. For the first time since Amara has known him, he looks his age vulnerability replacing the commanding presence he usually projects. It's a lot to process. He stands slowly, moving toward the door with the careful movements of someone carrying an invisible weight. Daniel, Miss Watkins, Solomon, thank you for your patience. I need to think about what I've learned today. After he leaves, Solomon glances between Amara and Daniel. I'm going to check on the Peterson contract, he says diplomatically. Give you two some space to process. Alone now, Amara and Daniel sit in the soft afternoon light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawls below them, but the silence between them feels intimate, separate from the world outside. How are you doing? Amara asks, and Daniel realizes it's the first personal question she's asked him. Honestly? I feel like I'm meeting my family for the first time. He rubs his temples. All those years thinking I was the enlightened one, the one who chose service over profit. But I was still living off money made from those hotels, still benefiting from systems I never questioned. You couldn't have known. Couldn't I? Daniel's voice is raw. Or did I just not want to look too closely? It's easier to focus on the good work you're doing than to examine where your privilege came from. Amara studies his profile as he stares out the window. There's something different about him now, the polished confidence stripped away, replaced by something more genuine and considerably more vulnerable. When I was building this company, she says quietly, I used to have panic attacks before every investor meeting. Daniel turns to look at her, surprised by the admission. I'd spend hours in the bathroom beforehand, trying to calm down, telling myself I belonged in those rooms. But part of me always felt like they could see right through me, like they knew I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. But you weren't pretending. Wasn't I? She leans back in her chair. I changed everything about myself to fit their world. The way I spoke, the way I dressed, even the way I walked. I studied other successful CEOs like I was learning to play a character. That's not pretending, Daniel says. That's survival. The understanding in his voice catches her off guard. She's never had someone from his world acknowledge that truth so directly. My brother used to say I was becoming someone else, she continues. Before he died, he told me he missed the sister who used to sing off-key and steal cookies from the kitchen. Did you? Miss her too? Amara considers this. I buried her so deep I forgot she existed. It seemed safer that way. They sit in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Then Daniel speaks. I have a confession. Last night, when I said I'd been following your work for 8 months, it started because I was trying to understand why my father was so eager to work with your company. But it became something else. What kind of something else? I was fascinated by your interviews, the way you talked about technology as a tool for justice. There was this video, you were speaking at a conference about inclusive design, and you said something that stuck with me. What was that? You said that the most radical thing you could do was build systems that treated everyone like they mattered. That dignity should be the default setting, not an upgrade. Amara feels something shift in her chest, a warming she doesn't quite recognize. You remembered that? I've been thinking about it for months. About how medicine should work the same way, dignity as the default setting. It's part of why I wanted to implement your platform principles in healthcare. Is that still what you want? After everything that's happened? Daniel meets her eyes directly. More than ever. But not just professionally anymore. The admission hangs between them, loaded with implications neither of them is quite ready to address directly. Amara feels herself softening in a way that both terrifies and intrigues her. You know what I realized today, she says. I've spent so much energy being angry at people like your family that I never considered what it might look like if someone actually wanted to change. And now I'm wondering if I remember how to trust anyone outside my chosen family. Daniel nods slowly. Trust has to be earned. Yes, it does. She pauses. But maybe it can be earned. Her phone buzzes, a text from Cameron's old girlfriend, now a pediatric nurse at the hospital where Amara's donation funded the new wing. The kids in the PICU are asking when you're coming to visit again. Little Maria drew you a picture. Amara shows Daniel the text, along with a photo attached, a crayon drawing of a woman with curly hair standing next to a hospital bed, both figures smiling. You visit them? Daniel asks. Every month. Quietly. No press, no announcements. She traces the edge of her phone with one finger. Cameron would have loved that ward. All the technology, the bright colors, the way the kids light up when they see the interactive walls. He would have been proud of you. Would he? The question comes out smaller than she intended. Sometimes I wonder if he'd recognize me now. If he'd like who I've become. Daniel is quiet for a long moment, considering her words carefully. Can I tell you something about brothers? She nods. I have an older brother, Richard. He's exactly what you'd expect from the Whitmore heir. Charming, ruthless, focused entirely on profit margins. We barely speak anymore because I chose medicine over business. I'm sorry. Don't be. The thing is, Richard used to be different. When we were kids, he was the one who brought home stray animals, who shared his lunch with kids who couldn't afford to buy their own. But somewhere along the way, he decided that compassion was weakness. Daniel turns to face her fully. The difference between you and Richard is that you never stopped caring. You just found bigger ways to show it. Building a company that prevents discrimination, funding hospital wings, creating systems that make sure other kids don't go through what Cameron did, that's not becoming someone else. That's becoming who you were always meant to be. Tears she didn't expect spring to Amara's eyes. She blinks them back, but not before Daniel notices. He would be proud, Daniel says softly. And I think he'd still recognize the girl who sang off-key and stole cookies. She's just learned to channel that rebel spirit into changing the world. For the first time in years, Amara allows herself to believe that might be true. What happens now? She asks. With the contract, with your family, with this? She gestures vaguely between them, acknowledging the connection that's been building despite the circumstances that brought them together. I don't know, Daniel admits. But I'd like to find out. If you're willing to take the risk. Before she can respond, her phone rings. Solomon's voice fills the room through the speaker. Amara, you need to see the news. Turn on Channel 7. Daniel reaches for the remote, and suddenly Victoria Ashford's face fills the wall-mounted screen. She's standing outside what looks like a law office, microphones thrust toward her face, her expression a mixture of defiance and desperation. Miss Ashford, a reporter is saying, you were disinherited by your uncle Robert Whitmore after an incident at last night's charity gala. Can you tell us what happened? Victoria's smile is sharp enough to cut glass. What happened is that my family chose to side with an outsider over their own blood. But the public deserves to know the truth about Amara Watkins and her so-called success story. Amara feels ice settle in her stomach. Daniel reaches for her hand without thinking, and she doesn't pull away. What truth is that? The reporter prompts. Victoria's eyes gleam with malicious satisfaction. Check the tax records. Check the subsidiary companies. Ask yourself how a woman from nothing built a billion-dollar empire so quickly. Ask yourself what she's really hiding. The screen cuts to commercial, leaving Daniel and Amara staring at each other in shocked silence. She can't know anything, Daniel says, but his voice lacks conviction. Amara's phone is already ringing again. Solomon, her lawyers, her board members, everyone needing to know how to handle this new crisis. Can she? Amara asks, and for the first time since Daniel has known her, she looks genuinely frightened. The story breaks at 6 p.m., just as the evening news cycle begins. Amara stands in her office, watching her life unravel across multiple screens as Solomon frantically works his phone and her legal team scrambles to craft a response. Nexus Technologies CEO's hidden past exposed, reads the banner on Channel 7. Victoria appears again, this time flanked by a man in an expensive suit who introduces himself as her attorney. My client has provided documentation showing a pattern of fraudulent activity dating back to Miss Watkins' early business loans, the lawyer says smoothly. Falsified income statements, undisclosed partnerships with offshore entities, potential tax evasion schemes. Amara's phone hasn't stopped ringing. Board members, investors, employees, everyone wanting answers she doesn't have because the accusations are carefully crafted lies mixed with just enough truth to be believable. It's brilliant, actually, Solomon says grimly, hanging up from another damage control call. She's taking legitimate business structures, your Delaware holdings, the investment partnerships, the tax optimization strategies every major company uses, and making them sound criminal. Can we sue? Amara asks, though she already knows the answer. For what? She's not technically lying. She's just presenting facts without context and letting people draw their own conclusions. Daniel has been silent through most of this, watching the coverage with growing horror. Now he stands and moves toward the window, his phone pressed to his ear. Dad, you need to do something, he says urgently. Call off Victoria. Tell her to retract the statements. Amara can hear Robert Sr.'s voice through the phone, agitated but distant. Daniel's face grows darker as he listens. What do you mean you can't control her? You cut her off from the family money. Daniel pauses, his expression shifting from anger to disbelief. She what? He lowers the phone, staring at Amara with something like devastation in his eyes. Victoria sold her story to the tabloids, he says quietly. Not just the business accusations. Everything. The party last night, the contract cancellation, your family background, your brother's death. How could she know about Cameron? Amara's voice is barely a whisper. Solomon's face goes ashen as he reads something on his phone. Hospital records. She somehow got access to donation records, cross-referenced them with obituaries, built a whole narrative about you using your brother's death for sympathy to build your business empire. The words hit Amara like physical blows. She sinks into her chair, staring at the screens where her most private pain is being dissected for public consumption. Turn it off, she says. Amara. Turn it all off. Solomon mutes the televisions, but the damage is already spreading. Social media is exploding with hot takes and judgment from people who know nothing about her life but feel qualified to condemn her choices. Daniel approaches her chair carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal. Amara, everyone who knows you will see through this. Will they? She laughs, but there's no humor in the sound. Look at the comments, Daniel. Look at what people are saying. She gestures toward her laptop, where social media feeds scroll with increasing vitriol. Typical. Another diversity hire who cheated her way to the top. Using her dead brother for pity points. Disgusting. This is what happens when we lower standards to be inclusive. Knew she was too good to be true. Nobody builds an empire that fast without cutting corners. These people don't know you, Daniel says desperately. Don't they? Amara stands, pacing to the window. This is what I was afraid of from the beginning. This is why I built walls, why I kept everything private. Because I knew that one day, someone would use my story against me. Her phone buzzes with a text from the hospital board chair. Emergency meeting tomorrow. Need to discuss whether the pediatric center naming is still appropriate given the allegations. Amara shows the message to Daniel and watches his face crumble. They can't be serious, he says. They're protecting the hospital's reputation, she replies flatly. I would do the same thing in their position. Solomon approaches with another grim update. 3 major investors have called emergency meetings. The Peterson deal is on hold pending investigation of the allegations. And he pauses, looking sick. The Whitmore contract termination is being painted as insider trading. They're claiming you knew the discrimination story would break and canceled to avoid the bad publicity. That's insane, Daniel says. The timeline doesn't even work. Doesn't matter, Amara cuts him off. The narrative is set. Successful black woman gets too big for her britches, gets exposed as a fraud. It's a story people are primed to believe. She moves to her desk, pulling out a set of keys and her personal briefcase. Solomon, draft a statement. Nothing defensive, nothing that dignifies the accusations. Just announce that I'm taking a temporary leave of absence while these matters are resolved. Amara, you can't. I can and I will. Her voice is steady now, the CEO mask sliding back into place. This company is bigger than me. I won't let my personal situation destroy what we've built. Daniel watches her shutting down, pulling away from everyone including him, and something desperate rises in his chest. What about us? He asks quietly. The question stops her cold. For a moment, vulnerability flickers across her face, the same expression he saw in the garden last night, when she'd allowed herself to be human instead of invincible. There is no us, Daniel, she says, and her voice is gentle but final. There never really was. We're from different worlds, and today proved why that matters. That's not true. Isn't it? She turns to face him fully. Look at the coverage. Look at how they're portraying me now that Victoria has given them permission. Your family's niece just handed the media a weapon to destroy everything I've built, and you want to talk about us? Victoria doesn't represent my family. She came from it, Amara says. That kind of cruelty doesn't develop in a vacuum, Daniel. It comes from generations of believing some people matter less than others. You said it yourself, 60 years of discrimination lawsuits. Daniel feels the ground shifting beneath him. So what, you're going to judge me for what my family did before I was even born? I'm protecting myself from what your family might do in the future. Her voice breaks slightly on the words, revealing the pain beneath her armor. I opened myself up to you, Daniel. I told you about Cameron, about the hospitals, about the parts of my life I never share with anyone. And within 24 hours, Victoria had weaponized all of it. I didn't tell her anything. You didn't have to, Amara says. The information was all there in public records if someone knew where to look and had the resources to dig. Someone with family connections, legal contacts, and a trust fund to pay private investigators. The accusation hangs between them like a chasm. Daniel stares at her, realizing she's not just pulling away from him, she's wondering if he was part of this all along. You think I was involved, he says, his voice hollow. I think you're a Whitmore, she replies. And I think I forgot what that means. The words hit him like a slap. Everything they'd built over the past day, the connection, the trust, the possibility of something real, crumbles in an instant. That's not fair, he says. Fair. Amara laughs bitterly. Nothing about this is fair, Daniel. But it is reality. Your family's money and connections just destroyed my reputation, potentially my company, definitely my privacy. And you want to talk about fair? She moves toward the door, briefcase in hand. Solomon will handle the transition. The board can decide whether they want me to stay on permanently or find a new CEO. Where are you going? She pauses at the door, not turning around. Somewhere your family can't find me. Amara, please. Goodbye, Daniel. She walks out, leaving him standing in her office surrounded by muted television screens and the wreckage of everything they might have been. Daniel sinks into her chair, staring at the city lights beginning to twinkle below. His phone buzzes with a text from his father, "Son, I'm so sorry. We never imagined Victoria would go this far." He doesn't respond. Instead, he thinks about Amara's face when she realized the extent of the betrayal, the way she'd shut down and pulled away not just from him but from everyone. He thinks about her brother Cameron, about the hospital she funds in secret, about the little girl's crayon drawing that made her eyes soft with love. And he thinks about how his family's legacy of cruelty has just claimed another victim, the woman he was falling in love with. When has someone's past actions affected your ability to trust them in the present? Is it possible to separate individuals from their family's history, or are we all responsible for the legacies we inherit? This is one of the hardest questions we face. Share your thoughts below. 3 days pass in a blur of crisis management and silence. Amara has retreated to her late grandmother's house in the mountains, 2 hours outside the city. The small cabin sits beside a lake that reflects the sky like broken glass, surrounded by pine trees that whisper secrets she's too tired to decode. She hasn't looked at the news since she left. Her phone sits on the kitchen counter, turned off, a monument to all the conversations she's refusing to have. Solomon has the house number for true emergencies, but so far, he's respected her need for silence. The refrigerator contains leftovers from concerned neighbors who remember her as little Amara, who used to spend summers here with her grandmother. They don't know about Nexus Technologies or billion-dollar deals or public scandals. To them, she's just Mary Watkins' granddaughter, home to heal from something that's left shadows under her eyes. She spends her mornings walking the lake's perimeter, her afternoons reading her grandmother's old journals, her evenings sitting on the dock watching the sun paint the water in impossible colors. It should be peaceful. It should be healing. Instead, she finds herself thinking about Daniel's hands when he draped his jacket around her shoulders. The way he listened to her story about Cameron without trying to fix anything. The genuine devastation in his voice when he learned about his family's history of discrimination. She's angry at herself for caring. Angry at him for making her care. Angry at the whole situation for being so impossibly complicated. On the fourth morning, she wakes to find an envelope slipped under her door. No postmark, no return address, just her name written in careful handwriting she doesn't recognize. Inside, she finds a single page, a resignation letter from Daniel to the Whitmore Hotel Board of Directors. Effective immediately, I am resigning from all positions within the Whitmore Hotel Corporation and removing myself from any role in family business operations. I cannot, in good conscience, continue to benefit from systems built on discrimination and cruelty, nor can I remain silent while the Whitmore name is used as a weapon against innocent people. My resignation comes with a donation of my entire inheritance, approximately $47 million, to be split equally between the Children's Hospital Foundation and a fund for minority-owned business development. I will be selling my shares in all family holdings and using the proceeds to establish a medical clinic that provides free care regardless of race, citizenship status, or ability to pay. The clinic will be named the Cameron Watkins Community Health Center, if Miss Watkins will permit it. If not, I understand completely. I know this gesture cannot undo the harm my family has caused, cannot repair the damage that has been done. But I hope it demonstrates that some of us understand the difference between apologizing with words and apologizing with actions. Daniel Whitmore. Amara reads the letter 3 times, her hands trembling slightly. Then she walks to the kitchen and turns on her phone. 47 missed calls. Hundreds of text messages. Dozens of voicemails. She scrolls through them, looking for Daniel's number, but finds nothing. Instead, she calls Solomon. Jesus, Amara, where have you been? I've been worried sick. Is it true about Daniel Whitmore? A pause. You heard about that? Is it true, Solomon? It's true. He resigned from everything 2 days ago. Caused a massive uproar, the family's in complete chaos. Robert Sr. tried to talk him out of it, but Daniel wouldn't budge. The resignation letter was leaked to the press within hours. And the money? The clinic? All legitimate. He's liquidating everything. The lawyers say it's the largest single donation to minority business development in the state's history. Solomon pauses. Amara, there's more. What? He held a press conference. Called out his entire family, their history, everything. He didn't defend you directly, his lawyers probably told him not to, but he made it crystal clear that he believes Victoria's accusations are character assassination. The video's gone viral. Amara closes her eyes, trying to process this information. What did he say exactly? I'll send you the link. But Amara, he looked broken. Like he was grieving something. After hanging up, Amara sits on her grandmother's porch swing, watching the lake ripple in the morning breeze. Her phone buzzes with the video link from Solomon. She hesitates before pressing play. Daniel stands behind a podium outside what looks like a community health center, his usual polished appearance replaced by something rawer, more honest. His tie is loose, his hair slightly mussed, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion or emotion or both. My name is Daniel Whitmore, he begins, his voice steady despite everything. And I come from a family built on privilege, maintained by discrimination, and protected by wealth. The reporters lean forward, sensing something unprecedented. 3 days ago, my cousin Victoria Ashford launched a vicious and unfounded attack on Amara Watkins, one of the most brilliant and ethical business leaders of our generation. She did this not because Miss Watkins had done anything wrong, but because Miss Watkins had the audacity to stand up to racism in my family's home. A murmur runs through the crowd of journalists. I want to be clear about something, Daniel continues, his voice gaining strength. Amara Watkins built her company through intelligence, innovation, and tireless work. She has created thousands of jobs, revolutionized an industry, and quietly donated millions to causes that help vulnerable communities. The attacks on her character are exactly what they appear to be: retaliation for refusing to accept discrimination silently. Amara feels tears sting her eyes. My family has a 60-year history of discrimination lawsuits, of treating people of color as less than human, of using wealth and privilege to avoid accountability. I have benefited from this system my entire life, and I can no longer pretend that staying silent makes me innocent. He pauses, looking directly into the camera. To Amara Watkins, wherever you are, I am sorry. Not just for what Victoria did, not just for my family's history, but for every room you've walked into where people looked at you and saw anything other than the extraordinary woman you are. You deserved better from us. You deserved better from me. His voice breaks slightly on the last words. I cannot undo the harm my family has caused. But I can refuse to profit from it any longer. I can use whatever privilege I have to try to build something better. And I can hope that someday, actions might speak louder than the accidents of birth that divide us. The video ends with Daniel walking away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions that follow him. Amara sits in silence for a long time, the phone heavy in her hands. Then she calls her driver. I need you to pick me up, she says. And I need you to take me to the city. Which address, Miss Watkins? She thinks about Daniel's press conference, about the resignation letter, about the clinic he's naming after her brother. She thinks about the choice he made, not just to apologize, but to sacrifice everything he'd inherited to try to make things right. The community health center on 5th Street, she says. And Marcus? Drive fast. 2 hours later, she stands outside a modest building with freshly painted walls and a sign that reads Cameron Watkins Community Health Center, opening soon. Through the windows, she can see Daniel inside, wearing jeans and a work shirt, painting walls alongside a crew of volunteers. He doesn't notice her at first. She watches him work, noting the careful way he applies the paint, the easy way he jokes with the other volunteers, the genuine smile on his face despite everything he's lost in the past few days. Finally, she knocks on the glass door. Daniel looks up, and their eyes meet through the window. For a moment, neither of them moves. Then he sets down his paintbrush and walks to the door. Hi, he says simply, opening it to let her in. Hi, she replies. They stand in the doorway, both uncertain how to begin this conversation. Around them, the volunteers have politely moved to other rooms, giving them privacy. You named it after Cameron, she says finally. I hoped you wouldn't mind. If you do, I can change it. I don't mind. Her voice is soft. He would have liked knowing his name was on something that helps people. Daniel nods, relief evident on his face. The pediatric wing will have the latest diagnostic equipment. Interactive walls like the ones you funded at the other hospital. Everything designed to make kids feel safe instead of scared. You gave up everything, she says. I gave up money I never earned for a legacy I never wanted. He pauses. Besides, I didn't give up everything. Not the things that actually matter. She looks around the space, the fresh paint, the medical equipment still in boxes, the volunteer schedule posted on the wall showing people from all walks of life donating their time to make this place real. Solomon says you're liquidating your entire inheritance. It's blood money, Amara. Every dollar of it, built on systems that hurt people like you, like Cameron, like every patient who couldn't afford decent care because of the barriers people like my family created. She studies his face, looking for any sign of regret or resentment, but finds only determination. What will you do now? Without the family money, the connections. Daniel smiles, and it transforms his entire face. I'll practice medicine. I'll run this clinic. I'll live in a normal apartment and drive a normal car and figure out who I am when I'm not coasting on inherited privilege. And your family? His smile fades slightly. My father is devastated, but trying to understand. Richard thinks I've lost my mind. Most of my cousins won't speak to me. He shrugs. But I can look at myself in the mirror again, so it's worth it. Amara feels something shift inside her chest, a wall she'd built crumbling without her permission. I'm sorry I accused you of being involved with Victoria's attack, she says quietly. You had every right to suspect me. I'm a Whitmore. Trust has to be earned, remember. Have you earned it? Daniel considers this seriously. Ask me again in a year, when you've seen whether I stick to this path or go crawling back to family money the first time things get difficult. Despite everything, Amara almost smiles. Fair enough. They stand in comfortable silence for a moment, both of them aware that they're at a crossroads. The choice they make in the next few minutes will determine whether this is goodbye forever or the beginning of something new. There's something else, Daniel says. I've been thinking about what you said, about dignity being the default setting. I want to implement that here, but I want to do it right. I was hoping, that is, if you're willing. What are you asking, Daniel? I'm asking if you'd consider consulting on the design. Not just the technology systems, but the whole patient experience. Make sure we're not just treating symptoms but treating people with the respect they deserve. Amara looks at him standing in the clinic he's building with her brother's name on the door, surrounded by the ruins of his old life and the beginnings of something better. I'll think about it, she says. It's not a yes, but it's not a no either. And for the first time in days, that feels like progress. 6 months later, the Cameron Watkins Community Health Center is bustling with life. Children's laughter echoes from the pediatric wing where interactive walls display gentle animations of forest creatures. In the waiting room, families from every background sit together, their differences less important than their shared humanity. Amara stands in the doorway of Daniel's office, watching him review patient charts. He looks different now, the aristocratic polish replaced by something more authentic. His hair is slightly longer, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his hands bearing small calluses from the physical work of building this place from nothing. Dr. Whitmore? A young nurse appears beside Amara. Mrs. Rodriguez is here for her follow-up. Daniel looks up, noticing Amara for the first time. I'll be right there, Maria. He sets down his charts and walks over, that familiar warmth in his eyes that still catches her off guard. How long have you been standing there? He asks. Long enough to see you talk Mrs. Chun through her diabetes management plan in Mandarin, she replies. When did you learn Mandarin? Rosetta Stone and desperation, he admits with a grin. Turns out when you're not relying on translators provided by hospital administrators, you learn pretty quickly. Over the past 6 months, they've built something fragile but real. Not a romance, not yet, but a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. Amara consults on patient experience design while slowly rebuilding her company's reputation. Daniel runs the clinic with a dedication that borders on obsessive, determined to prove that change is possible. They've been careful with each other, both aware of the wounds that still need healing. But there's been coffee meetings that turned into dinner conversations, shared glances across conference rooms, moments when their hands brush over patient files and neither of them pulls away immediately. I have news, Amara says, following him as he checks on the pediatric wing. Good news or complicated news? The best kind, she says. The board voted this morning. They want me back as CEO. Daniel stops walking, turning to face her with undisguised joy. Amara, that's incredible. When do you start? I already have. The announcement goes out this afternoon. She pauses. There's something else. The Whitmore Hotel Corporation called. They want to discuss reinstating our contract. Daniel's expression grows more complex. And I told them I'd consider it, but only under certain conditions. They've reached the pediatric playroom, where a group of children are using the interactive wall system Amara designed. The technology responds to their movements, creating beautiful patterns of light that follow their gestures. A little girl with pigtails waves her hand and watches purple butterflies dance across the wall. What conditions? Daniel asks. Full diversity audit of all properties. Mandatory bias training for all management. A minority business development fund equal to 10% of annual profits. And she turns to look at him. A Whitmore family member on the clinic's board of directors. Which family member? The only one I trust. Daniel stares at her, understanding flooding his face. You're offering me a way back into the family business. I'm offering you a way to transform it from the inside. If you want it. He's quiet for a long moment, watching the children play. One little boy, no more than 5, is teaching the others how to make the wall display different animals. His joy is infectious, filling the room with giggles and wonder. You know what I realized watching these kids? Daniel says finally. They don't see the technology as separate from the care. It's all one experience. The gentle lights, the friendly staff, the equipment that doesn't look scary. Dignity as the default setting, just like you said. That was always the goal. But I couldn't have achieved it without you. He turns to face her fully. 6 months ago, I thought changing meant giving up everything I was. You taught me that real change means using what you have to become better than what you were. Before Amara can respond, her phone buzzes. She glances at it and smiles. What is it? A text from the hospital board. They want to discuss expanding the Pediatric Technology Center. Apparently, children's hospitals across the country are requesting similar designs. The Cameron Watkins model, Daniel says softly. The Cameron Watkins model, she agrees. They walk back toward his office in comfortable silence, both aware that they're approaching another crossroads. The professional partnership has worked. The tentative friendship has deepened. But neither has acknowledged what else might be growing between them. Daniel stops outside his office door. Amara, there's something I need to tell you. She waits. When I gave up the family money, when I resigned from the board, when I started this clinic, I told myself I was doing it for justice, for my conscience, for the greater good. He looks directly at her. But if I'm being completely honest, I was doing it for you. The admission hangs between them, vulnerable and brave. Daniel. I'm not asking for anything, he says quickly. I'm not expecting anything. I just needed you to know that meeting you changed everything about how I see the world. About how I see myself. Amara feels her carefully constructed walls trembling. For 6 months, she's been afraid to want too much, to trust too deeply, to believe that something real could grow from the wreckage of that terrible night. Do you want to know why I really came back to the clinic project? She asks. Why? Because watching you paint walls in old jeans, seeing you learn Mandarin for your patients, knowing you gave up everything comfortable to build something meaningful. She takes a breath. It reminded me that there are still people in the world worth taking risks for. Daniel steps closer, and she doesn't step back. Is that what this is? A risk. The biggest one I've ever taken, she admits. But maybe it's time I stopped protecting myself from every possible hurt and started protecting the things that matter. What matters? Instead of answering with words, she reaches for his hand. His fingers intertwine with hers, and it feels like coming home after a journey she didn't know she was taking. The clinic matters, she says. The kids in that pediatric wing matter. The families who get to keep their dignity while they heal. The way you've changed. The way you've helped me remember who I am underneath all the armor. And us? He asks quietly. Do we matter? She thinks of her brother Cameron, who would have loved seeing children's faces light up with wonder in that playroom. She thinks of her grandmother's journals, full of stories about love that survives hardship. She thinks of the little girl's crayon drawing that still sits on her desk, a woman and a child, both smiling, both safe. We matter, she says. Whatever this becomes, however long it takes, we matter. Daniel lifts their joined hands, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Then we have all the time in the world to figure it out. Through the window of his office, they can see the clinic's main hallway where patients and families move with purpose and hope. The afternoon light streams through windows that were designed to feel welcoming rather than institutional. Everything about this place speaks to the possibility of healing, not just bodies, but hearts and communities and the deep wounds that divide people from each other. There's one more thing, Amara says, her voice soft with possibility. The Children's Hospital called about the new wing. They're planning a dedication ceremony next month. That's wonderful. They want both of us to speak. About the partnership between the clinic and the hospital, about how technology can serve justice. She pauses. About how love at last looks different than we expected, but feels exactly like coming home. Daniel squeezes her hand, and she can see in his eyes the same hope she feels rising in her chest, fragile still, but growing stronger with each shared moment. Love at last, he repeats, and the words sound like a promise. Outside, the city continues its endless rhythm of change and possibility. Inside the Cameron Watkins Community Health Center, two people who found each other in the aftermath of cruelty hold hands and plan for a future built on justice, compassion, and the radical belief that everyone deserves dignity as their default setting. The champagne glass that fell 6 months ago has been swept away, its fragments recycled into something new. But the love that grew from that moment of shattering, that's here to stay.